Hello and welcome to Tubecast number 5. My name's Ash, and one of my subscribers asked me to look at a channel called Debunking History. So I subscribed to it. I've watched a few videos. I can understand why he asked me to look at that. And the most recent video that came up, which I saw this morning, I wanted to react to and have a look at. I'll be honest, this is the thumbnail. I found this a little problematic initially because it says, "Is denying the reality of gender similar to denying the reality of race?" Which presupposes that there is a reality or a truth that we already know, and actually says very little. It doesn't tell me what this chap thinks the reality is. So very personable chap, nicely presented. Generally, he doesn't appear to be confrontational. So let's just jump into what he says.
Hello again. 30 years ago, few people in either Britain or America would have denied that there were fundamental differences between men and women, and that these differences were rooted in biology.
So far so good. So we clearly we're going to make some comparison between where we were 30 years ago and where we are now. Which kind of suggests to me that we're about to deny progress. But let's crack on.
Similarly, most people believe that there were differences between black people and white, and that here too, biology played a major role.
Okay, so this is interesting. If you scroll through a few videos on History Debunked, he does look quite a lot at the differences between black and white people. And in fairness, I don't actually believe that he sees this as being racist. I think he feels he's just portraying what he sees as the truth. So differences between black people and white people, I mean, genetically, yes, the genes are coded for darker skin, so more melatonin in the skin to protect from harsh sunlight. Generally, I guess you could say, you know, a certain hair type. Generally, black people have black, tight, curly hair. But apart from that, still part of the human race.
Today, even to hint at either of these propositions is to lay oneself open to charges of transphobia or being a white supremacist. At the very least, somebody is sure to accuse anybody speaking openly about such ideas of hate speech.
So I'm not sure whether that's a bit of a generalisation. Whether somebody might say that, mentioning race or mentioning differences in genders is hate speech. You could probably find somebody that will. I don't think everybody will.
This is all very mysterious. No great breakthrough has occurred in the study of either anthropology or physiology in the last 3 decades.
No great breakthrough. I don't know whether it would be a breakthrough, but certainly over 30 years, there is a much greater understanding of the human body, the human genome, things that get mapped, understanding of sex and sexuality. I would have to sort of see what proof you had to say that no breakthrough's been made. There's certainly been advances.
And yet what may or may not be said about these topics now falls within very narrow parameters. Just try and suggest, for instance, that only women can have babies, to give one example. 30 years ago, this would have been so obvious as to scarcely be worth speaking of. And yet now the very idea is absolutely forbidden to be spoken of out loud.
Okay, so I don't know where this impression is that you can't say that women can. It's only women that can have babies. It is only women that can have babies by definition. Only a woman can have a baby. However, a person that cannot have a baby, that does not mean they are not a woman. And I know where you, or I suspect that what you're driving at is transgender women. However, there are plenty of women who are born biologically women, who identify as women, who cannot have a baby. So you're falling into a bit of either deliberately or by accident, you're falling into this little trap. It's a bit like the logical premise, all men are mortal, Socrates is a man, therefore the conclusion is Socrates is mortal. But if you turn that on its head somewhat, you could say that Socrates is mortal, all men are mortal, therefore Socrates is a man. That it does not stack up logically either, because the way that stacks up is Socrates could be a cat. You haven't defined that only men are mortal. So to make that syllogism stack up, you would have to start with only men are mortal, and then you would still make a mistake because one of your premises is false. So yeah, I think you've fallen into a bit of a trap here. I don't know whether this is a straw man argument, but no, only women can have babies. That's just fact.
In the same way, one might easily have discussed 30 years ago why it is that black students do not do as well at British A-level examinations or the American Scholastic Aptitude Test. Talking about the different scores and IQs between ethnic groups would have been okay, and it would be possible to debate whether there was a biological basis, perhaps genetic, for such anomalies, or whether it was mostly down to family culture. In other words, it would be possible to talk about this subject.
I'm not sure it's not possible to talk about the subject. I'm not sure why we would want to go there. We have plenty of evidence for intelligence and lack thereof in any race. You could look at Neil deGrasse Tyson, an eminently clever and intelligent man, and he is black. So if you, I don't know why you would want to distill this to saying that there is a difference between races, between the colour of your skin and intelligence. I can see why this would make it makes me a little uncomfortable. It's not something that I wouldn't want to discuss.
Today, no conversation can take place in any public arena on such ideas. It is accepted unquestioningly that society alone is responsible for black students not doing as well academically as those of Chinese origin. No one wants to talk about biology. Nobody wants to blame their families. Instead, it is society via a mechanism known as institutional or systemic racism, which is responsible for any low scores that we see.
Okay, so I would need to see where the evidence for this comes from, because if it's from nothing more than a newspaper or social media, I'm not really interested. I would like to see a study on it, and I would disagree. I think anything is open for public debate or discussion. I don't see why it shouldn't be. We have freedom of speech, freedom of expression. Certainly something we could discuss.
Any conversation which starts to veer in the direction of biology will soon make people uneasy. I imagine that the atmosphere today must be a little like that which existed at the time that the Spanish Inquisition was busy rooting out heresy.
Well, nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition.
In those days, nobody would want to discuss the presence or absence of Jesus in the host, or the precise nature of the Trinity, for fear of ending up in the dungeons of the Inquisitors. This is a terrible state of affairs, obviously, and it's the same today with sex and gender. The idea that there is a strong and direct link between our physical bodies and our identity as men or women should hardly be a controversial one. It certainly wasn't 30 years ago.
I don't think that that is a controversial idea at all. I think it's well accepted that in general there is a link between the physical body and the mental. I don't think that's controversial, and I don't know why we keep harping back to 30 years ago. What's the next thing? Well, 80 years ago we all had rickets, but we got through. I don't know why we reference 30 years ago as a great time. 30 years ago was what, 1980s? I suspect that possibly we're actually talking about a lot longer than 30 years ago, but however, we'll press on.
Today, though, even the very suggestion that women have ovaries and give birth while men have penises will cause sharp intakes of breath at middle-class dinner tables. Not, I hasten to add, that I often find myself at middle-class dinner tables, except when I visit my daughter and her fiancé.
Really? I don't understand why that's controversial, unless you are suggesting that it is only women that are that way, only men that are that way. If you're defining man or woman by the exterior genitalia, there are people with gender dysmorphia who will identify differently to their sex at birth. But again, a sharp intake of breath at a middle-class dinner table? No, I don't go to very middle-class dinners either.
There have been, as I say, no dramatic discoveries in the field of either human sexuality and gender, nor in the study of race and ethnicity in the last 30 years. What has changed is ideology, not the science. I have remarked before that when ideology and science get mixed up, the outlook is seldom promising. How can we tell that this is an ideological rather than a scientific change? It is because both gender and ethnicity have been placed in the same category as subjects which may not be discussed other than from one accepted perspective. For my own part, I have no fixed ideas about either sex and gender nor race and ethnicity. On the face of it, it looks to me as an interested layman that biology must play a strong part in what is observed, but of course I might be quite wrong about this. I am perfectly prepared to be persuaded that I am wrong, but those who hold a contrary view do not often engage in reasoned debate and explain their own views and discuss the evidence. Instead, they shout out catchphrases like transphobia, hate speech and racism, in the hope that people disagreeing with them will be frightened and shut up.
Okay, so I hold a contrary view. My view is different to yours. I'm not sure that your view is entirely clear to me, but as you say, you're willing to have your point of view changed, and that would be on balance of evidence and science and critical thinking, etc., etc. So that's interesting, because you certainly seem like an open-minded person. You may have some views, but you're willing to have them changed, as am I. I pride myself on being open-minded and forming views based on the science and the data, and for those views to change, because science doesn't change, but the data and the scientific model can show something different. So here's what would be interesting. You say that this can't be discussed in a public arena. Well, YouTube, this is a pretty public arena, and I would be fascinated and delighted to actually have that discussion with you. I'm going to post this video. I will leave a comment in your video, and maybe we can, if you would like, we can talk about it. We can get some tech together so we can, I don't know whether we Zoom call it or something like that, but I have children who are of an age to understand the technology and help set it up. And perhaps we can agree a format, not necessarily a formalized debate, but a format where we can have a discussion respectfully and discuss the ideas that have come up in this video. So I'd really enjoy that. I will post that information once I've posted this video. I'll put a copy on your website, or I'll put a comment on your website. And perhaps you'd like to get back to me, because I think it would be a fascinating discussion. So, pretty short video for me this time. Thank you for watching. I do hope... I've got a feeling this chap's name's Simon. And if I've got that wrong, I apologise. I do hope you'll come back to me, and I do hope we can maybe do a discussion that we can both post up on our respective YouTube channels. Thanks for watching. Look after yourselves. Bye-bye.